to the Fantasy Football Fanalist Podcast, presented by Fantasy Data. Here's your hosts, Billy Muzio and Bradley Stalder.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Fanalist Podcast presented by Fantasy Data. Billy and Bradley in the house tonight, and we are going over our 2021 bold predictions for the 21 season. Bradley, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm feeling bold. I'm feeling audacious. I'm ready to dive in a little bit. Give some predictions that don't exactly align with my points or consensus rankings, but I feel are within the range of outcomes, and I want to at least give a little credence to what might happen. And I think that's what you did as well, Billy. There are some takes here that, we wouldn't probably draft like regular. We'd probably take at ADP, but we have to keep these in mind as we're drafting, especially during this week is one of the heaviest draft weeks and weekends of the fantasy football season.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of reemphasize what you said. These are not our projections. This is just what we are saying is within the realm of possibilities based upon how we feel about these players. And do you know how hard it was for me not to mention Baker Mayfield again in the show? I deliberately said, hey, I'm going to leave Baker out of this. I think I've mentioned him a couple times. And
we both have made our love for Baker Mayfield very well known on this podcast.
Yeah, so I said, you know what? No Baker Mayfield tonight. I did have another Brown on here though, so we will touch base on that shortly. But again, these are not our projections, but these are just something that we are saying is within the realm of possibilities based upon how we think these offensive schemes are going to work out, the players, what the systems they're running, and everything that entails in 2021. So let's hit these slides, Bradley. Let's give the people what they're waiting for, and let's go through our 2021 bold predictions.
Billy, we'll start with your number one bold prediction, and it starts with a player that I thought was a sleeper. I was very in favor of Jameis Winston going into this podcast, and then I was like, Billy, what are some of your bold predictions? He begins, Jameis Winston will finish outside the top 20 in points per game among quarterbacks. And I was like, well, all right, Billy is just taking a knife to me. I see how it is.
So actually, the only reason I picked this one was because when you shared your home league draft with me, you shared your screen with me. You said, "How do you like it?" And I said, "Jameis Winston is the best you could do in a 10 league, in a 10-team league as your quarterback." and then we started going through everything, and I said, "How about this, Bradley? You will show me your waiver wire every single week, and I will pick a quarterback that is going to have higher points on that given week than Jameis Winston." And if it is Jameis Winston that week, I'll pick Jameis Winston. But any other given week, I will pick a quarterback off the waiver wire and tell Bradley who will score more points than Jameis Winston in his home league.
Well, full disclosure, I did draft Trey Lance before Jameis Winston in this home league, but
I hope so.
Jameis is the starter for the New Orleans Saints, and he has not finished outside the top 20 of quarterbacks any year that he's played all 16 games. Look, I know that Taysom Hill is still there, and I know that he's going to get some run on the ground and maybe be a weapon through the air, but I just don't see a scenario where Jameis Winston implodes.
I do, and it's right here on the slides. I mean, he was quarterback 46 in catchable pass rate. He was quarterback 31 in true passer rating. He had the 6th highest turnover-worthy play rate and the 4th lowest PFF grade under pressure. The best thing about this is Bradley threw the slide together, and although he listed him as a sleeper, he buckled up and threw all these negative numbers in here for me to read because I was napping because I was flying the plane today. And I just have to say, Bradley, you did a fantastic job proving my point that Jameis Winston is going to finish outside the top 20 this year in points per game.
Let's make it noted that Billy was not doing research while he was flying. He was a responsible flyer. This was the first time. Well, tell us a little bit more about the flying here, Billy.
Yeah,
it was a big day, wasn't it?
It was a big day. Yeah, we did the honorary shirt cut as well. It's the rite of passage as a pilot, becoming your first solo pilot day. It's the first time today that I flew without my instructor in the plane. And as soon as my instructor got out of the plane and she closed the door, that oh shit moment hit me. I'm about to take off in a plane without an instructor in it. And I have a lot of hours on my belt. Most people fly with much less. But I'm just more of a cautious person and like to make sure that I'm 100% ready whenever I fully jump into things. And so door closes, my family's there watching. They're out there on the runway or near the runway. And I taxi down, Alpha Taxi, to hit runway 16 and do all my calls and take off. And lo and behold, I take off just like I normally did. As soon as I put the throttle in and full power, like instincts kicked in, like nerves were gone. It just was watching, my airspeed and took off. And next thing I know, I felt like, Gabe Davis ascending to the wide receiver, ranks inside fantasy football and just off into the sky. And that's how the day turned out, and did all my calls and landed perfectly and came on in and ready for a podcast.
Well, Billy is less nervous about flying now than he is about drafting Jameis Winston. We'll put a bow on that. My number one bold prediction for this year is that Mike Evans finishes outside the top 20 of wide receivers in fantasy points per game. And he hasn't done this since 2015. So he has a track record of finishing within that within that top 20. But last year was different. And under Tom Brady, it's different. And with those weapons, it's different. He had a 17.9% target share in 2020. In fact, when Antonio Brown came back, Brown had a higher target share than Evans or Godwin just per game. Yes, he had a career high in touchdowns, but it was his fewest targets. He had, I believe, 106 targets despite playing all 16 games. It was his fewest air yards of his career. The amount of weapons and I don't have it baked in. I still have Tom Brady within my top 12 quarterbacks, maybe top 10. But it's within the range of outcomes that Brady can lose it this year. We have to at least keep that within the range of outcomes as well. And if Brady loses it, we saw what happened with Peyton Manning. He throws for 50-plus touchdowns one year, and then the next year he has more interceptions than touchdowns. So we at least – and that's a quarterback who was just enshrined this past year in the Hall of Fame. I think that there's a lot of risk with Mike Evans. He's going to experience significant touchdown regression, and the target share, yardage, that's all concerning to me in this high-powered offense. There are just so many weapons. I think Mike Evans is a fade this year.
Didn't he finish though as wide receiver 11 last year?
He did.
He did. It's a bold prediction. I get it. I have him inside my top 20. He's, I think, my wide receiver 15 or 16, somewhere around there. But I get it. Antonio Brown is here a full season. He looked good. He came off the street, and just put up points and extrapolated his over 100 targets. And I think we both have him projected for 105, 106 target range this season. So and Tom Brady spreads the ball around. So I think it's within the realm of possibilities. And so I commend you, Bradley, for going outside the rain here and planting your flag.
Okay, Billy, your number 2 prediction, bold prediction. Nick Chubb will lead the NFL in rushing yards. Tell us more about your love for the Chubb.
Oh, I get Chubby talking about Chubb. Chubb is just the best pure runner in the NFL. I the last 2 years I've actually placed the bet on this, and he got hurt last year, but still had one hell of a year when he came back. Last year he finished as running back 7 rushing yards despite missing 4 games, 4.5 technically. But he finished running back 2 in rushing yards in 2019. Only Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook averaged more rushing yards per game than he did. If he plays a full 16 games and the Browns have more positive game scripts, as I am projecting this year, it is within the realm of possibilities for Nick Chubb to lead the NFL in rushing yards.
He also has a real knack for the end zone. He can get in there. He's used as a goal line back. It's not like they take him off the field for Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt, in fact, over the last 4 or 5 weeks or so, was not getting much on the ground and was not getting much through the air. It became the Nick Chubb show at the end of the season. So, look, he's been on the outside looking in, and this might be the year that he can break through.
Could you imagine the fantasy points that Nick Chubb would have if he had Derrick Henry's volume? Like, Derrick Henry's had 368 carries, I should say, not even touches, 368 carries in the last 2 years. Sorry, 678, 300 plus each year. 678 carries the last 2 years. If Nick Chubb had that type of volume, imagine like he'd be the first overall pick.
Well, and he's a capable pass catcher. He's not like he's limited like Derrick Henry. He's limited by personnel, not by skill set. So if there was the opportunity, he would be able to, I think, be in the conversation for number one.
See that face? Remember that face. That's gonna be the leading rusher's face at the end of the year.
I would love it, and I know a lot of my Cleveland friends and family would love it too. Go Nick Chubb. My second bold prediction is I'm going to go with a rookie here. Dig a little deeper. I mentioned him before, I think, a few times.
Real deep.
Michael Strachan finishes in the top 10 among rookie wide receivers in fantasy points. So not super crazy, but he's someone that we need to keep at least on our radar given the T.Y. Hilton injury. Hilton played mostly on the outside. Strachan is 6'4", 220. He's an alpha wide receiver. He has a speed score in the 80-plus percentile. He had the highest college dominator rating among all rookie wide receivers. And he was drafted...
You almost said Wookie.
Wookie. That hair is just distracting. I'm sorry, Michael. Look, it's Michael Pittman on the outside. It's Paris Campbell in the slot. And I think that it's within the range of outcomes that Strachan can make a move as the other wide receiver on the outside. I'm not convinced that Zach Pascal has the talent to hold off a player like Strachan. I mean, Strachan came into the league after his post-draft interview. He was like, I am the missing piece that the Colts need for this offense. The Colts went to the postseason last year. They made the playoffs with a washed-up Phillip Rivers. He could be a piece that is very useful in this offense, and he was peppered with targets in the offseason. He was very used a lot in the preseason games. Training camp, there was a tweet every day about how he was making one-handed catches or he was making defensive backs look silly. This is a player that we need to keep at least on our radar. I'm not saying like he's going to be making your lineups within the first couple of weeks, but he might be, if you got a large bench, a deep stash, at least keep your eye out for Michael Strachan.
I think it's within our possibilities. I mean, when we look at this wide receiver class, it's pretty clearly we have names like Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, Terrace Marshall, Elijah Moore, Rondell Moore, right? And then outside that, it's pretty open. I mean,
then it comes down to opportunity and skill set, and he's already established himself. He made the 53-man roster, which is a huge. Des Fitzpatrick, who was drafted in the 4th round, couldn't even do that for the Titans.
Yeah, so, I mean, most would have had Bateman there, but with the surgery, that delays things. And same thing with Kadarius Toney and the injuries and just this Giants team and the issues they have altogether. So I think another name to be mentioned would be Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I think there's an opportunity for him to hit this top 10 for the rookie wide receivers. It's not out of the realm of possibility. So I like it, Bradley. I know you've been touting him all off season, comparing him to my boy Michael Pittman, and doing comparisons with your little charts that you post there on Twitter. And they've had some very convincing arguments during your posts. So I have to say that the research behind those posts has been very well researched, and I think it's within the realm of possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bold take because he was a 7th round pick. Usually these guys don't make an impact, but the fact that he makes the 53-man roster, the fact that he's constantly getting a lot of buzz and that he's getting targeted a lot in training camp, I think that he's not going to overtake Michael Pittman this year. Pittman has established himself as the one in this offense, but he's got the size and the strength and the speed to make plays down the field. And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he was way more involved in this Colts offense near the end of the year.
We shall see. But before we hop on the next one, just want to let everybody know that is watching. Make sure to use promo code FFF20 for 20% off all your fantasy data subscriptions. It stacks with all the other subscriptions currently on the site and the discounts that are there. So make sure to go on, log in, use code FFF20, 20% off for the season. They just released the new optimizer today for DFS. So that thing is up and running. The new snap count page is awesome, especially if you don't prefer to use optimizers and you prefer just do your own research. You can take a look at snap counts and routes ran and where they're running routes from and use that for your research when choosing your wide receivers. So use code FFF20 at fantasydata.com. Get 20% off all your fantasy data subscriptions.
Love it, Billy. Let's get to your number 3 bold prediction for this year. And that's that your boy, Bryan Edwards, will be a wide receiver too. A top 24-ish wide receiver. Talk to us about Bryan Edwards.
So Bryan Edwards, he was on my sleeper list. I figured I'd keep the momentum going. John Brown was cut. Nelson Aguilar finished as wide receiver 32 last season. We talked about Edwards' frame last podcast. Go back and watch that in detail, a little bit more on why I like Bryan Edwards, but he's slotted as the wide receiver 3 right now inside this offense. I would not be surprised if he is, the number 1 receiving option outside Darren Waller on this team come to the end of the year. He's being utilized in the red zone, and I have him projected for 94 targets, 63 receptions, 1,097 yards, and 6 touchdowns. So I am bullish on Bryan Edwards, and as we said last show, you mentioned it to me off air, and we mentioned it on air, was Derek Carr had the second highest completion rate for 20 yards or more downfield, only behind yours truly, or your favorite, I should say, Aaron Rodgers. Not me. I'm not throwing the ball 20 yards out of the field. But Aaron Rodgers. So that offense was better than people thought last year, and it was because of their deep threat. And I think that Bryan Edwards can step into that role with the bigger frame and take over.
Billy, do you know who Player Profiler comps Bryan Edwards most closely?
It's going to be somebody amazing.
Corey Davis.
Oh, I love him even more. I knew there was a reason. Look at that. Wheeler's a smart man.
There we go. Love some Bryan Edwards. I've seen him get drafted higher and higher and higher, though, in a lot of the underdog drafts that I've been doing. He's been skyrocketing. In fact, he's jumped 10 spots approximately as of late. So his ADP is still 126. Very, draftable. Yeah. Very. He's not priced himself out yet, I don't think.
No, I mean, it's not the glory days that we had when he was going around 16 and 17 in these FFPC drafts. It's he's definitely, has a higher price tag, but he's for that tag, he's still a bargain, in my opinion. If he hits these projections, and I've seen a lot of other analysts with similar projections. So if this is the possibility that he lands in this 1,000-yard mark in a round 10 pick, around 11 pick, you're still getting a deal.
Absolutely. Okay, my third bold prediction. KJ Hamler jumps into the top 36 of wide receivers in PPR. And he's almost forgotten in Denver. There's been a lot of talk about Cortland Sutton coming back from his ACL. And of course, we have our, Jerry Judy. Love me some Jerry Judy. I'll talk about Judy a little bit later. But he was a second-round pick last year. He missed 3 games due to injury. He's got speed up the wazoo, 40-yard dash, 4.32. His player profiler comp is Deshaun Jackson.
He's fast.
He's real fast.
Fast.
We saw KJ Hamler pull off an 80-yard receiving touchdown in the preseason, and he had a 19% target share as a rookie. It's not as though he was muddling his way through. When he was on the field, he was getting targeted. He was the 29th best wide receiver last season as a rookie in target separation. And he now has a new quarterback. I think a vastly improved NFL quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater. Billy, I pulled up a side-by-side comparison, pretty much every single metric, efficiency metric, comparing Drew Lock to Teddy Bridgewater, and it wasn't close. Teddy Bridgewater this preseason had an 83% completion percentage. I mean, he had Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson had a 70% catch rate. Robbie Anderson's previous career high was in the mid-50s. This is a player, Teddy Bridgewater, who can get the ball to his players, and especially close to the line of scrimmage. That's where KJ Hamler lines up. Hamler lined up 66% of his routes were out of the slot. So he's going to play out of the slot. Judy and Sutton are going to play mostly on the outside. And we saw Curtis Samuel really succeed in that slot role in Carolina last year. Samuel finishes the wide receiver 24, and they have comparable speed. These are players who can get down the field, make one man miss, and just go the distance. So I think that Hamler gets a more consistent role this year, even if he gets slightly fewer targets, total targets. I think he'll still have a good target share. I think the quarterback play will be improved, which means they're going to be scoring more often. And he's got the talent. So I think that this is a player that you want to be optimistic about. He's coming, once again, super cheap in underdog drafts. I mean, Hamler is going on underdog at ADP 165. Now, he is climbing. He's jumped up about 21 spots as of late. But 165, he's way cheaper even than Bryan Edwards.
Yeah,
so
13, 14.
So if you're taking a shot at a late round player who has upside, this is a player who can get there, that may be able to crack that wide receiver 3 if you need someone on the cheap.
I like Hamler. I like him a lot more in best ball than I do in a confined league or a redraft league, simply just because you don't have to pick and choose. Just hitting the start button for me for Hamler is just tough, right? I think that best ball just automatically starts him. I think he's gonna have those spike weeks that you really want in a best ball league. So I like the pick. I like it more for best ball than I do a regular confined league, but I think he has a skill set to get there.
Okay, let's move on to our fourth bold prediction, Billy, and that is tight end Juwan Johnson will be this year's Robert Tonyan Jr. And finally, you've listened to me, Billy. I put Juwan Johnson as a deep cut of the week many, many weeks ago, and it seemed to be coming to fruition. So tell us why you're optimistic about Juwan Johnson.
It breaks down to situation primarily. I mean, similar situation that we saw last year at Tonyan. I mean, the receiving core is just uninspiring, I think is the word I'm looking for. I mean, Marquez Callaway is the wide receiver 1 right now. The earliest we're going to see Michael Thomas is week 7. Adam Troutman's injured. When he was on the field, he was used primarily as a blocker. Juwan Johnson's a converted wide receiver. I just think that he has the skills that are going to be needed in order to be a great pass catcher in this offense, and that's what they need. I mean, Traequan Smith is, let's face it, he's garbage. He's had like 80 receptions in 3 years. So he's not the answer. And so I just think out of demand, and he's just going to be on the field a lot. He's going to be used a lot, and he's going to be heavily used inside this offense. So I think just simply based upon demand and how this offense is going to be moving the ball, I think that he's going to be used and he's going to put up numbers.
So you're saying Jameis Winston is Aaron Rodgers?
No, that is not what I'm saying. I'm saying Jameis Winston is Blake Bortles, and we saw what Blake Bortles was able to do in garbage time. And it's
Blake Bortles was not outside the top 20 of quarterbacks.
So we're gonna have a lot of scenarios in where they're throwing the ball a lot. It's still a Sean Payton offense, and Juwan Johnson is going to be one of the main targets on the field for the offense.
Yeah, Adam Troutman this offseason was looked at as a breakout candidate, but as we saw in the preseason, he was blocking a lot. He was staying in line, and he suffered, I believe, an ankle injury. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so Jameis equals Rodgers. Got it. Well, maybe if post LASIK surgery, maybe Jameis can see where he's throwing the ball.
Yeah,
But
it's more like Jameis equals Rodgers in 20 years when Rodgers is like 50 plus.
I think even at 50, Rodgers will be a better quarterback than Jameis
Probably.
Winston. But
Him and Tom Brady are going to be playing in the NFL still.
Jared Cook had a 12.5% target share, and that has to go somewhere. We saw Michael Thomas have a 30% target share, but he's out for what, the first 4 at least games, if not the 6th?
He's out 5 weeks mandated
5 weeks.
because of the pup. They have a bye week 6. Earliest we'll see him is week 7. Yeah, so 50%. That's 50% of your fantasy season.
And that's a 30% target share of the game's passes. So like earlier in the offseason, I was a little lower on Alvin Kamara, but now I have him projected as my running back 1, and it mostly has to do with the necessary target share that has to happen with Michael Thomas being out, Traequan Smith not demanding a target share, Marcus Callaway, even if we project Marcus Callaway at a 20% target share, which is generous, I think, like there is a ton of opportunity for a player like Juwan Johnson to step forward, who has the measurables, and Adam Troutman has not been showing it this offseason. So I think it's a good pick.
Thank you.
Okay. As the tight end whisperer of the podcast.
Yeah.
Stamp of approval.
I'll take it.
My 4th bold prediction. I said I'd get back to Jerry Judy.
Ooh, I love the little stat sheet here you got.
Jerry Judy has more total PPR fantasy points in 2021 than CD Lamb.
That's it. I'm out of here, Bradley. That's too bold.
Look,
drawing the line. That's enough.
I love Lamb. Don't get me wrong. I've drafted Lamb in a bunch of places.
Bradley, I need you to pee into this cup.
Look, I've drafted Lamb in a lot of places. I think that there is definitely room for him to grow in that Dallas offense. But I also think that Jerry Judy has a great opportunity, and that Teddy Bridgewater is also the right quarterback for him. The comp that I was looking for in the offense from Carolina to Denver was Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson in 2019 had about a 55% catch rate, and he played mostly on the outside. In fact, a ton on that, pretty exclusively on the outside. Instead, in 2020, Robbie Anderson moved into the slot for about 33% of his snaps, which is what Judy was at last year, approximately 33%. Now, Judy, he has ridiculous amount of unrealized yards. 965. It was like second or third most unrealized yards. It was more, Judy had more unrealized yards than CD Lamb had actual receiving yards, which just blows my mind. There is a ceiling for Jerry Judy that Drew Lock just couldn't tap into because he could not get Judy the ball. Jerry Judy was one of only 2 players in the NFL last season with over 100 targets, but a lower than 50% catch rate.
Yeah, AJ Green was the other one.
The other one was AJ Green.
You know how bad that season was.
Right. We see actually in that comparison of target quality, Jerry Judy's was 180th. Now, Lamb wasn't much better because 2/3 of the season, it was the likes of Garrett Gilbert, Ben DiNucci, and Andy Dalton throwing in the ball. So it was still like 103rd, the target quality. But Judy demanded more targets. He had a higher target rate. And he was within, about 80 receiving yards of CD Lamb, despite Lamb having Dak Prescott for 5 games. So I think this is within the range of outcomes. We saw what the difference was between Sam Darnold's New York Jets in 2019 and Teddy Bridgewater's connection with Robbie Anderson in 2020. Robbie Anderson went ham. He had a 26% target share, over 1,000 receiving yards, a 70% catch rate. So I think that this is definitely something we need to keep in mind. Not so much pulling CD Lamb down, although it pulls him down a tad, but I think we need to see that there's much more of a ceiling with Teddy Bridgewater actually getting the ball to his receivers than what Drew Lock could ever unleash.
That's all I have to say. I'm not partaking in this conversation.
Okay. Wow.
Jerry Judy has target separation issues as well. I think the only reason he was even remotely close to CeeDee Lamb last year is because Dak Prescott was injured, is because everybody on this Broncos team was injured. I mean, Jerry Judy, his target separation was horrible. 1.64 yards. I mean, he's wide receiver 43, wide receiver 46 in true catch rate. He could take a step forward, but we're asking him to overcome a high-powered offense with an elite quarterback at helm in order for him to beat CeeDee Lamb. I just don't think it's possible. I like Judy coming out of college, but I just don't think this offense has that type of capacity to outperform CeeDee Lamb, these Dallas Cowboys.
Look, the Dallas Cowboys didn't lose anybody, though. If anything, they showed that they're willing to give Amari Cooper.
JB Joe knows. It says it in the name. He knows.
Okay, but Tim Patrick was good at getting a 17% target share.
Tim Patrick.
That's my point. You can give a certain target share to these no-name players, right?
But Fant was hurt last year. Sutton was hurt last year. The stars aligned.
That's why they were getting the fourth string wide receivers some target share, which they shouldn't be getting.
But even as he had fourth string wide receivers in the field, and Patrick was outperforming Jerry Judy. I'm plain and simple. I think that, I'd put a lot of money on this bet if you want to be a bookie tonight. I know it's a bold prediction, and I can appreciate the bold prediction, but this one's too bold for my liking.
Okay, we'll see at the end of the year.
We will. Beer bet.
For the record, Tim Patrick last year,
was better at football.
Stop. He had a 16% target share. 19.2% target rate. So, yeah, Hamler and Judy. I'm believing in the Dallas or the Denver offense. I believe in the Dallas offense too, but I think that Judy can catch up to a ceiling. We saw Teddy Bridgewater sustain good wide receivers, even though he himself wasn't that great of a quarterback overall. So, there are only two main wide receivers. There we go. Judy's still going to be CeeDee with Dak to the moon. This is not a hate on CeeDee Lamb. I don't want you to take it that way, but we need to see a ceiling that is yet unrealized for Jerry Judy.
I think I like Wheeler's comment better.
Yep, both of them are going to go off. I love it. This is the bold Denver prediction episode. Did you not know? Okay, Billy, we'll get to your last bold prediction here. Number 5
was. Oh yes, awesome.
If you're going to give me crud about bold predictions, this is not bold at all.
This is not bold. I just want to talk about
the only thing this is bald. This is bald, not bold. I didn't know we were doing bald predictions.
I just wanted to use the bold tweet that I saw today. So it's not that bold, but top 3 now, people are going to say, hey, he's got to finish ahead of Kamara, he's got to finish ahead of Cook, or he's got to finish ahead of CMC. That is now a little bit more bold than it would have been last week or 2 weeks ago before Winston was named the starter. Austin Eckler to me is my running back 3 in PPR leagues this year. I love this offense. They have a beefed up O-line. I still think they're going to throw a lot. This Lombardi system, and I think this is the year that Austin. Thanks, Wheeler. This is the year that Austin Eckler is going to surpass 900 yards on the ground, and I think that's going to play a big part in him reaching this top 3 running back in PPR leagues. We've already seen him be electric through the air. 100 plus target seasons is not out of the question for Austin Eckler. So in order for him to hit this, He's going to have goal line usage, or not consistently, but just here and there sprinkled in. And he's going to have to hit 900 to 1,000 yards on the ground. So that being said, he was running back 8 in targets despite missing 6 games last year, running back 5 in receiving yards. He averaged 6.5 targets, 5.5 receptions in 2020. Finished running back 9 in fantasy points per game for running backs with 10-plus games. And last year, career high 11.6 rushes, and has 6 games with 12-plus rushes in 2020. So big things on the horizon here, not only for Austin Eckler, but for the Chargers as well, in my predictions for 2021.
He was used a lot more on the ground last year relative to other seasons. You mentioned his 6 games with 12 or more rushes in 2020. He had 7 total games like that the other 46 games of his career. So he's been a player who's ramped up his involvement in this offense. And we've been saying all offseason, we've been listening to podcasts with different talking heads saying Austin Eckler needs to access his ceiling, and the only way to do that is the goal line carries, and the way he has to do that is through carry rush volume. And we saw an increased rush volume relative to the rest of his career in 2020. So I think that there is more of a ceiling than maybe we're letting on. I don't have Austin Eckler. I think he has, top 5 upside. I think I have him at running back 5, but top 3 is pretty bold.
I love it. One more thing I forgot that also catapults him in these rankings is he cares about your fantasy team.
He does. He does. So if you haven't checked it out, go to Austin Eckler's Twitter handle, and he will give you instructions on how to win some free swag from Austin Eckler himself. So check out I think it's at Austin Eckler. So he wants you to win with him, show that you drafted him, and follow the directions there. Go to Austin Eckler's Twitter page and find out how you can win some Austin Eckler swag.
Love it.
Okay. My final and 5th bold prediction is that Joe Burrow finishes with fewer fantasy points than Daniel Jones. I'm waiting for the
I was gonna buzz it, but I actually like this take. I think they're both bad, or they're gonna be bad. I think this year. I think so. I want to hear it. Throw it down.
I think it all comes down to rushing, because let's look at the offenses. The offensive lines for both of them are terrible. The defenses are both terrible. They're going to need to throw the ball, both of them. I think that Joe Burrow is a more talented passer than Daniel Jones. I think that's pretty clear. However, I think they have comparable weapons. You have at least, like, they have useful weapons. Daniel Jones has Sterling Shepard. He has Kenny Golladay. He has Darius Slayton. He has Kadarius Toney as their 4th possible wide receiver. He has Evan Ingram, Kyle Rudolph, and Saquon Barkley. These are all like decent fantasy options. I mean, Saquon Barkley, one of the best skilled running backs in the league, and he was sorely missed last year. The issue really comes down to rushing, because Daniel Jones will rush the ball and rush effectively. He averaged 30.2 rush yards per game last season. He had 65 carries. Okay, that's over about 4.5 rushes per game. He didn't play all 16. I think he played like 14 games. So he had like 4.5 rushes per game. Burrow last year averaged 3.7 rushes per game, but only 14 rush yards per game. So his rushing yardage was way low. Yes, Daniel Jones had that one run where he ran like 60 yards and then tumbled at the end, blah, blah, blah. And it was embarrassing and everyone laughed. But that is within the range of outcomes. Daniel Jones can run with the ball. And I am concerned about Burrow's ceiling rushing. That was with him having a decent knee. Like, he might have 1 or 2 rushes in the game and maybe crack 10 rushing yards. So I think that Daniel Jones, as bad as the Giants offense has looked, like, we've also seen how bad the Cincinnati Bengals offense has looked as well this preseason. And with that rushing floor, I think Daniel Jones can have more fantasy points this year than Joe Burrow.
It's a bold take, Bradley. Very, very, very bold. I like the weapons that Burrow has. The only thing I would say that remotely has a chance would be which O-line is going to be worse.
Because
Right.
they're both terrible.
They're both terrible. And it breaks down to how good can each running back be? How good can this O-line be?
And I would take Saquon over Joe Mixon.
I would too. And then, but I think the Bengals O-line is worse than this O-line here for the Giants. So I think that's what it's going to break down to. I think it's also going to break down to who has the better defense, right? And who is going to be on the field more for the offense, who's going to be off the field more. So there's going to be a lot of different factors here, but I like the weapons a little bit more on the Bengals side.
I think the Bengals have higher ceiling individuals, but the Giants have more. I think they have just more depth to them. So even if they suffer an injury,
a big pile of shit isn't a better pile of shit though.
Have you seen Jurassic Park?
Yeah. Oh man, that's I don't know which team that is right now, but it's one of the two.
It's both of them.
Maybe it's both.
There
conjoined.
are multiple Triceratops piles of poop. Okay, didn't think I would be making a Jurassic Park reference on tonight's podcast, but here we are talking about Joe Burrow and Daniel Jones. Here's the thing, though: Joe Burrow has been oftentimes drafted very high, like quarterback 12, quarterback 14. Daniel Jones is not being drafted anywhere close to that. So or at all, if you're thinking about drafting Joe Burrow, don't just take someone else in that round. That is a useful fantasy piece, and just take Daniel Jones later if you really want that type of garbage quarterback.
Bold take, Bradley, but that's what we're here. We're not here to just throw out easy hot takes. It's bold predictions here tonight for the 2021 podcast.
It's pretty garbagey. All right. Well, anyways, all right, Billy, we've got some announcements and some show notes about what's going to be coming up for the Fantasy Football Fan List. We want to inform our listeners as to what the schedule and flow is going to be like for the season. So what's going to be going on this coming Tuesday?
So this Tuesday is going to be a little abnormal compared to our regular Tuesday show. So Tuesday shows will typically cover waiver wires, and then we're going to be going over our prize picks, Thursday night football slates, and entering our picks live on the show for all the listeners and viewers to watch. And we're also going to have a short recap of last week as well. This coming Tuesday, though, it's going to be a whole week one Thursday night football prize pick show, just because we can and because we want to. Quite
we're so excited! It's football time, Billy.
Yeah.
It's
so we're gonna do Brett from Prize Picks, the vice president of Prize Picks, coming back on. We're gonna do a whole prize pick show. We're gonna be doing entries. We're gonna be talking football because it's week one next week, Bradley.
Less than a week until kickoff, Billy.
Oh my goodness. It's like I don't know what I'm gonna do with myself. Like, I'm drafting daily. It's gonna end next week. I'm kind of sad. I do have drafts into next Saturday, so I do have one more week of drafting. So I do have that going for me. But week one next week, Tuesday, is going to be the show with Brett and Prize Picks. Then we're going to come back on Friday live. We're going to cover our Hurt and Alert, which is going to be our injury recaps, as well as news heading into week one, who's starting, who's sitting, what's going on in the NFL. And then we are going to do another Prize Picks show for the Sunday slates. That will be a little quicker. It's not going to be the full show. It's just going to be a 20-minute, 30-minute segment. And then we're going to be covering our top positional rankings that we are submitting to the Fantasy Pros Accuracy Contest this year. So Bradley and I were accepted in to submit our rankings to the Fantasy Pros Accuracy Contest. And we're going to be covering that live weekly, unless we start winning. Then we're not going to do it because then people might copy us. But we're going to start doing it live at first because we're the newbies on the block. And we're going to be submitting our entries, and we're going to cover them live with all of our viewers, so you guys can see who our top positional players are at those positions week in and week out for the.
And then
NFL
we're going to have
season.
to do some explain yourself, Billy, because we might be looking at some different players, different rankings, and that matchups come into play, injuries come into play, weather comes into play, everything. So we'll talk through some of the most egregious ones for sure.
So that's kind of going to be the outline for the season. Next week, a little different because we still have some drafting going on. So I have the High Society Leagues that I'm going to be recording one with Dave Hubbard. And then we're going to post it onto the show probably Saturday night, or onto the stream, I should say. And that is a big league. It's an FFPC. It's a 10K-er. So we are going to be rocking and rolling in that league, and a lot of money on the table. Stakes are high. The winnings are high, and we're going to give you a sneak peek into a high stakes draft with some of the best players in the world. So that will be recorded, not live, and that will be posted to our YouTube channel probably Saturday night. So keep your eye peeled for that, because that's not going to be something you want to miss.
We've got lots of content this season. We've got a lot of ways that we can help you win and think through our process. And we're really grateful for all of our listeners and followers that have been joining us on this journey during the off season and now are embarking with us for this 2021 NFL season.
And then last thing before we wrap it up and say goodbye, we had a couple questions on here for their flex, their starters, who they should be playing. We didn't show them on the podcast, but if you do have questions, feel free to tag us. We've been debating about doing a Sunday morning show, but I think that's going to be best served if we just answer questions through Twitter. So feel free to tag us on Twitter posts, add us, shoot us DMs. My DMs are open on Twitter, so you can, if I don't follow you, you can message me, and I'd be happy to answer any start-sit questions for you, given I have enough time permitted with my 100 lineups that day. But it's I will do my best to try to get to everybody if you DM me any questions that you have for start-sit advice. Well, I think that's it, Bradley. I'm looking forward to week 1, 2021 next week. This is our last show of the preseason for 2021. And we kick off next week, week 1. So make sure to be here, folks. Week 1 Prize Picks, Tuesday night with Brett from Prize Picks. We will see you all then, 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 Eastern. Good luck in your final drafts, and we'll see you all back here shortly. Bye-bye.